You're back. I hope you're back for the second episode of The Success Snap. And the woman I'm interviewing today, Mary Kay Savarese, she has got a story. She's lived several lives. I know. I say I've lived several lives. I don't know. I think I'm on my fifth one because I had my first one where I was a poor radio personality. Then I had the one where I was kind of just hanging out in DC. Then I had the one where I was a screenwriter in LA. And then I had, I guess this is my fourth one because I've just been kind of kicking around Charlotte, North Carolina for a while. But Mary has a really interesting story. She's lived several lives, and we want to get into those. She's been in accounting and business, she's been a mom, now she's an author. It's an incredible story, and you'll want to hear it, I guarantee, because she's even going to talk about tigers wearing cologne and taking bubble baths. So that in and of itself, if you were thinking, maybe I'll stay, maybe I won't, there's tigers in bubble baths. I mean, you gotta stay for that. So we're gonna talk to Mary in a minute, but I want to give a shout out. I want to do two shout outs. First, go ahead and subscribe. You want to subscribe. I know you do. And if you subscribe, you will be entered into a drawing at the end of the month where you will get a $25 Amazon gift card should you win. So $25 Amazon gift card, maybe you get something. Maybe you use it as a discount on something you really want. Either way, it's 25 free dollars, and all you got to do is subscribe. Subscribe. Do it. You know you want to. And before I talk to Mary, you need to know that this episode is brought to you by JBO Community Foundation. The JBO Community Foundation is founded by a woman. Um, why can't I think of her name? She's my friend. I should know her name. Tracy Matthews Dennis and her husband, who is originally from Liberia. And what they do is they've gone back to Liberia to help people with farming so that they can sustain themselves and their community with foods that they grow and that they sell. So that's JBO Community Foundation. And you can find the link to it, like the link to all of Mary's stuff, in the show notes. So read the show notes. You can find Mary, you can find her books, you can find information about JBO Community Foundation. So now back to Mary. Mary, welcome to the Success Snap. You have an interesting life. You started off in college with business and finance and accounting. Then you got married, you raised your family, you have your kids. Now you are a very successful, traditionally published author. So you've covered a lot of ground. And so I want to start at the beginning, kind of like that song. You know that song from what's a doe a deer, a female deer? Why can't I think of the name? The Sound of Music. Let's start at the very beginning. So we want to start at the beginning. It always interests me that people go to college at 18. You're pretty much just getting everything figured out, and you're supposed to know what it is you want to do with the rest of your life. So, as a writer, I want to know what made you go into accounting? Because when I saw you had a background in accounting and finance, it didn't compute. Because as a writer, I think of those as being opposites. You have your writing over here, your creativity, and then you have your straight laced accounting and finance. So tell me, what made you choose that?
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, Karen. Why did I choose that? Well, I am older than you. And back then, when I was choosing a career, it was something that would sustain me, something where I could support myself. I did not know what was going to happen. I had older parents that immigrated. I was taking care of them. They've since passed on. And but it was a career move that I knew I could always get a job. Yeah, did I want to write? I had all these ideas in the back of my head where they stayed for decades. And they really finally, your heart does win out. And what happens is you reach a point in your life, and I was at the point, Karen, where I was dealing with empty nest syndrome, and I was having a difficult time. On the surface, I was telling everybody how happy I am, such a wonderful time in my life. And behind the scenes, what was going on in my subconscious was I was having a very difficult time with it. And my writing was a big help to me through this, because as I was dealing with severe anxiety, I realized that if I sat and I wrote stories and I wrote my novels and my manuscripts, I focused on that. And guess what? The anxiety would dissipate. So that's the journey. But the journey was a journey of the heart, very much stepping stones. And this was something now in my life, as you said, we live all these lives like cats have all these lives. Something for Mary Kay Savarese that I wanted to share with the world. I have all these ideas for stories, fantasy adventures. My debut novel was a murder mystery. And I love to write with quirky titles. I'm known for them. And they come from incredible stories. The titles, then I develop everything else.
Now, your first title is very
Yes.
interesting, and I kind of hinted at it with the tigers and
Tigers
bubble
love
blasts.
tigers love bubble bats and obsession perfume. Who knew? What a title. It was my first novel, my fourth manuscript. Finally, Karen, after 10 years of rejections and submittings, somebody was interested. And then they fought me on the title, but the title won out. Now, the title, I am inspired by titles. So, Tigers Love Bubble Bats and Obsession Perfume, who knew, came from visiting a wildlife sanctuary in St. Augustine, Florida. And what this sanctuary is a home for old big cats, tigers, panthers, cougars, lions. And they go there because they're tossed aside, like in old TV shows, cable shows, movies, even people that had them as pets. So I go to the end of this tour. There is a vat overflowing with bubbles, 15 feet wide, 5 feet high. I'm behind a thin cage. There's a wildlife handler behind another thin cage. Out walks this 600-pound Siberian tiger, walks across the plank, looks like he's taking off a robe, slips into this vat of bubbles. The wildlife handler sprays obsession perfume on his tongue, and I stood there. My mouth was open. I went, Tigers Love Bubble. Who would ever believe this? This is the title of my next book. And it became a metaphor because they're tossed aside like an old shoe. So my protagonist, middle-aged woman, after 25 years of marriage, tossed aside like an old shoe. And it's one murder after another. Is she committing them or will she be next? And that was the inspiration for Tigers Love Bubble Baths. But nobody believes it. And if you go on the internet, you will see that tigers adore bubble baths. They can sit in them all day. And obsession perfume, why do they love it? Pheromones. It attracts them. Wildlife handlers will spray rocks in the wild and it attracts them. and it calms them like a cocktail will calm me. It,
And once we get off of here and we finish this, I'm now looking for pictures of tigers in bubble baths
okay, you'll
because
find
that's the
them. You,
kind of stuff I
yes,
do. I just
yes,
look at nerdy stuff. But
yes,
we want to talk about what really interests me is how people's definition of success changes over time.
yes, yes,
And I imagine when you were in college in accounting and you were thinking about taking care of yourself and being
yes,
able to provide for yourself,
right,
that came with a specific definition of success. But you got married, you raised your kids. Raising kids is its own, well, that's its
yes,
own thing. It's its own definition of success
right,
there. How raising good kids has its own definition of success. And then you're on to this third life,
yep,
the life of an author. And what does that look like to you? So tell me a little bit about your journey to get to where you are now.
yeah. It's if there's anything I can stress with your audience is to never ever give up on yourself, because how, everybody's out there to put you down, to say it can't happen, as you know from your own experiences. Cover your ears, go la 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 la. If there's something in your soul, in your heart you want, go for it. That's my number one thing. What was my journey? My journey was a dream, and a dream where I had to build a thick skin because, as I said, I'm in overnight success, a 10-year overnight success. For me, it was rejection after rejection after rejection. Why didn't I just give up? Because of the joy that I felt in creating stories. And I love to write in fantasy adventure, the murder mystery, that in itself, too, is intertwined with the supernatural. So, again, that's all fantasy coming from my head. And when you get it down on paper, to me, it is such a high to do something like that. Get it down on paper. And for me, that was my work of art. But it was stepping stones, Karen. Everything was stepping stones. And you hope the next day will be better or you'll get something positive. And
Question.
yes,
And I've been around a lot of artists, a lot of people that create.
yes,
And when you're dealing with rejection after rejection, and then you get those rejections that you thought maybe wouldn't have been a rejection, but then it comes and it's like
yeah.
it kind of takes the wind out of your sails. When that happens, how do you get back on track? What is it that you do to get back on track?
I'll usually try to go out, have some fun time with family and friends, beautiful evening, and then the next day hit the grindstone again. And I'm a very positive person. So I'll say, okay, let's go. Let's keep trying again to get something positive, because my goal was to become traditionally published. Back then, self publishing was taboo. And we didn't have what authors have today. Self publishing has changed. You have co publishing. You still have to be careful with both of those areas. But to become traditionally published, it was like, okay, I'll just keep trying. And you know what? It only takes one person to have faith in you, just one person. And I was able to find that one person after 10 years. But as I said, for me, I had such a joy in creating that I would put it aside, that manuscript, go to a new manuscript. So now, and you would think, Karen, once all of and my novels, they've won awards, 8 awards, 5 awards, best selling with the ebooks. you would think that the publisher would be interested when I approached them with my next idea, which was a 3-book. It was a trilogy called the Star Writers Trilogy, the first of which is, again, quirky title, The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper. They weren't interested. Guess what? Rejection again. So go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'm
and,
just
and and at that point, what do? Here you had a publisher, but they don't want what you're now presenting, even though you've been successful with them. I approached other publishing houses, and I found, and I believe we each have, like, there's a destiny in our lives. And my destiny brought me to another small publishing house, all female publishing house. They were interested in my trilogy. And that's where we are now. So I stay loyal to my publisher. I do, but when somebody says, "Okay, let's go with 3-book deal," we'll do it. And they are also they traditionally publish me.
And that's interesting that you had to find a new publisher. You had success with this first book. And so part of you maybe had to be saying, "Oh, I've arrived. I'm published. Look at me. I'm a big deal." And then you go with your next idea and they're like, "Nope, nope, sorry. Gonna take a pass." And I
Yeah.
mean, again, it's that wind out of your sails. It's like you're
Mhm.
always having to prove yourself. You're
Oh.
always starting over, even when you don't think you should have to. You
Mhm.
do.
I think just like any other creative person, like an actor too, you're only as good as your last picture, right? I'm only as good as my last book. And, you have new ideas and you have to constantly prove yourself like, yeah, I have this idea. I don't think it's out there. And it just takes one person to really say yes and to have faith in you. But you're right. It's all stepping stones, and it's very humbling. I am just so grateful for everything that has happened to me up until now. And I don't ever want to take anything for granted. And I think if I position myself that it's not always going to be easy, when it happens, you're like, phew, that wasn't so bad. Right? If you're expecting it to happen and it doesn't happen, I think that's the worst.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of a situation. People have always told me, "You've got a great voice. You should do voiceovers and all this stuff." So I took the initiative and I applied for 5 voiceover jobs and I got declined from all 5. And I part of me is like, "But I'm Karen Beach. I'm awesome, don't you know?" But I took a step back from it for a minute because I have to realize I have to get to that place where I recognize that there's more rejection than
Yes.
acceptance. And my friends who are actors, people like you that are writers, you know that. You know it's
Mhm.
intrinsic that you're going to get more no's than yeses.
Yes.
And I have to wrap my mind around that and to be able to say, "Okay, well, they said no, but I'm going to try this one. They
Right.
said no, I'm going to try that one," until I get going, because no one has success all the time. I mean, you think about the actors and actresses that you like and all the roles that they didn't
Yes.
get,
Exactly.
that
We
they're
think,
still not getting.
right. We think it happens overnight. That's wonderful. It happens overnight for you. But most of the time, it's a lot of persistence, a lot
Right.
of faith, and a lot of work. And that stick to it, is ness. I think I screwed that up, but yeah, I think your audience knows what I mean. If the secret to that is, if it is a part of the heart, a part of the soul, it's a part of you, that gives you the passion to stick with it. If you're just doing it, and let me see if it works, then it's very easy to say, okay, let me go to the next thing.
Right. And you have to get to that point because, you want to, you think of yourself one way, you think of what you created in one way, you love this novel you created. And from screenwriting, I know that those people, those characters become people.
Yes.
Like it becomes a part where they could literally walk through the door and sit down and have a conversation with you
Sure.
because a good character is that fleshed out.
Right. And for an author, you become each of those characters. They become your baby. You realize what it takes to motivate them, what makes them good, what makes them bad, and all of that. And then honestly, when I finish, I have such joy and excitement when I begin writing a new manuscript. And when I finish it, or I finish working with my creative editor, it's depressing. It's sad because it's like, oh, that's over. And then I have to pump myself up and say, oh, I got these great ideas. I'm going to start on the new project.
Yeah, it is because it's like you're saying goodbye to a friend.
Yes,
You've
exactly.
gotten to know this person, and people that don't write, people that don't create, sometimes don't get it, but you're creating a person in your mind, but you're actually creating a person.
Yes.
So I wrote a screenplay that got published, and not published, but got produced. And, in LA, a lot of times writers, you see it now with the writer's strike,
Yes.
um, they kind of think scripts just get made. There's a person behind it that wrote it. And then everyone that touches it, I found out, has to change it. They have to
Oh,
put
yep.
their own mark on it.
Yep.
And several of the changes that were made, I literally had to stop reading them
Hmm.
after I sold the script because I'm like, she would never say that.
Yep.
He wouldn't do that because I wrote and I created these people. I know their motivations. I know their background, what they would say, what they wouldn't say. And when I saw it, I was like, no, no, that doesn't make sense because I know this person. It's just like if someone said, well, Karen said this. My friends know Karen would have never said that. And she wouldn't have used that voice. She wouldn't have had that. You know what I mean? Because you know someone.
Exactly. It's the same way in the author's world. They take your manuscript, and honestly, from a manuscript that is accepted by a publisher to the point there is a book, it is not what was handed to them. And there are many times, like I'll say, wow, and editors are, you love them, you hate them. There are many that know how to take your project manuscript and bring it to the next level, and that's what they do. But there are many times, as you said, you're fighting for something because you know your baby inside now. When they change this or they change, it has can change something down the road, and they may not know that whole picture like you do. So I have found myself fighting for many scenes to be left in because they were so important to the story. Other things I let go because they bring things to a different level. And I go, wow, thank you for that.
Yeah, I understand completely what you're saying. But now you did your first published. Now I'm going back and forth,
Yeah.
produced and
Yeah.
published. Now you've published your first novel. You have a house.
Thank you.
Your next novel's coming out.
Yes.
Do you feel like you're a success?
Well, the I published my third novel's coming out. So the first was The Tigers. The second was the first of the Savarese trilogy, and that's The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper. And
Toi, for people
Toile,
that want to
yes,
know, is spelled like toilet, but
right?
it's toi. So
Toile,
we had a whole discussion before we
yeah,
started.
yeah.
She's like,
They be
toi. And I'm like, but it looks like toilet.
Toile,
And
right?
she's like, but it's toi. And I said,
Toile. I've
and
been
I said in French, ha ha. because that's pretty much all the French I know.
Right. And
Uh-huh.
and right. And toile is something I would have in my home. And it's a very descriptive wallpaper, two-toned, and it tells a story. I saw love and betrayal, and I wrote a fantasy adventure around that. Now, the second book in the Star Writers trilogy will be out this summer.
What's it
And
called?
that is called the Star Writers Club. And it takes a theme from the first book and a theme that's in the third book. It is in between two earthly books. It's a little bit more ethereal. And it was so hard developing this world. And I fought back and forth with the editor, but we finally got through it. And the theme is that it is written in the stars. And what does that mean? It is written in the stars. It means your destiny has already been written in the stars. Yeah, it may change, but you have not reached that point in time yet where you experience that destiny. And I think that's something everybody goes through. So the second book basically explains the star riders and the life they live. And basically, you have to be dead to be a star rider, but that's a whole other world. So
Yeah,
again,
that's
Karen,
kind of down. That's kind of a downer.
it's a downer, but it's not, because
Okay.
it's a fantasy adventure. So it just brings you into a make believe world. So, and
Okay.
and
That
it's
is
been
great.
yeah, and that's between the two bookends, the girl in the Toile Wallpaper and Return of the Girl in the Toile Wallpaper.
Okay. And the star writers are in the middle,
The
writing
Star Riders,
people's destinies. And
you got it. You hit the nail right on the head.
so, what advice would you have about success for people that are struggling, people that are redefining themselves from that point of view?
I think number one is to love yourself, have faith in yourself, and never give up on yourself. Expect to be told over and over again, you may not be worthy, you may not be good. If this is something you really, really want and it's a part of you and you're so good at it, stick with it. And from my own experience, I can promise you it'll happen for you too. Not overnight, I can't promise that, but if it's something, if you're persistent, it'll happen to you too. And it doesn't mean writing, it could be anything else that people have a joy in doing. Hobbies start out that way. Something you love, something gives you happiness, and it can make a career for somebody. But you know, when something gives you joy, you can't wait to get out of bed in the morning, right? And hit the ground running and get to it. So it could be anything.
Okay, Mary, thank you so much for taking your time to come to my little old show, the Success Snap, because I think you're very successful. And I'm going to go get your book. And right after we're done with this, I'm looking for two things: Toile Wallpaper,
Yes, you'll find.
and I'm looking for tigers taking bubble baths. I
Yep.
want pictures of tigers taking bubble. When I do the blog for this post, I'm gonna have tigers and bubble bath. I might just have
Yes,
your cover
absolutely.
because that is, I mean, tigers and bubble baths. How
It
fun is that?
it's so much fun. It's so unbelievable. And this past holiday season, the Milwaukee Zoo was requesting um, Tasha. There were two tigers, and one was asking for bubble baths, the other was asking for Obsession perfume. And I sent it into them, and we had so much fun with that. I'm telling you, when you watch a jungle creature in a bubble bath, they become so human. It is so, so incredible.
Okay, so now it's three things. I'm looking for the tigers and bubble bath pictures.
Yeah,
I'm going to find out about this Toile Wallpaper.
yeah.
And then I'm taking a bubble bath, and I'm
There
gonna
you go.
have some wine with me, and make a night of it because
Yeah.
it's that kind of day. But thank you so much, Mary, for coming by. I really appreciate it. And if you're still listening, which I hope you are, because this was a great discussion, go ahead and subscribe to the show. Subscribe. Every Thursday, we have new episodes coming out. And Mary has been great. And I love the way she talks about the stick to itiveness that it takes to really reach your goals and your dreams. You're going to hear no, but you have to know yourself well enough to just keep going despite what you hear. You have to keep going. And once you do, you too can be a success like Mary Savarese. That's it. And I will see you. Hey, Benji. We will see you next week.